It was a bright, sunny afternoon and the park was buzzing with people. Children ran around laughing. Families enjoyed picnics under the shade of trees. And friends strolled along the paths, chatting and taking pictures. Among the crowd, a young black girl stood slightly apart from the rest. She had come to enjoy the day, to laugh with her friends and to forget some of the stress that had been building up in her life. But in that moment, something felt wrong. She couldn't quite put her finger on it at first, just a strange feeling in her stomach that made her uneasy. She had noticed a group of people nearby, watching her and her friends a little too closely. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just subtle glances and a kind of hovering presence that made her skin crawl. She tried to brush it off, telling herself she was overthinking it, that it was nothing but the feeling wouldn't go away. Her friends were laughing and joking a few feet away, completely unaware of her discomfort, and she didn't want to ruin their fun by speaking up. She looked around, trying to find someone she could quietly signal for help, someone who could notice her without making a scene. That's when she saw them. Two men who were instantly recognizable even from a distance. Dwayne Johnson and John Cena were there, moving through the crowd as if they were just regular visitors, shaking hands, smiling at fans, and taking pictures. But there was something about their presence that felt different to her. They carried themselves with an energy that drew attention naturally, yet they moved with awareness, scanning the crowd even as they smiled and laughed. Her heart skipped a beat. She had seen them on television countless times, cheering crowds, wrestling in packed arenas, performing stunts that seemed impossible. And yet here they were in the same park just a few steps away. The thought of approaching them seemed impossible at first, almost laughable, but her gut told her she needed help. She tried to make her signal subtle, a small wave, a gesture that wouldn't draw attention but would let them know she was in trouble. Dwayne Johnson was the first to notice. He was talking to a family, laughing and crouching down to be at eye level with a child, but his gaze shifted almost immediately when he caught sight of the small, nervous wave from the girl. There was no hesitation. His smile faded slightly as he assessed the situation. He was used to crowds, used to fans reaching out for selfies or autographs, but this was different. This was not a greeting or a fan request. It was a silent cry for help. John Cena, a few steps behind, noticed the subtle change in Johnson's demeanor. Cena had always been calm and measured, never rushing without thinking. But he had a sixth sense for reading people, honed from years of performing under pressure. He turned his attention toward the girl as well, observing the nervous shift in her stance, the way her eyes darted around the crowd, and the tension in her shoulders. Both men understood immediately that something was wrong. The girl's breath caught in her throat as she realized that they had seen her. A mix of relief and fear washed over her. Relief because she had been noticed, that someone might help her, and fear because now she had to trust complete strangers. Two strangers who were also celebrities, yet somehow seemed trustworthy. She felt small in the vastness of the park, but in that moment, the two men's presence seemed to create a kind of protective bubble around her. Dwayne Johnson moved first, stepping subtly but deliberately closer, making sure he kept the girl in his line of sight without alarming the people around them. His body language was firm but non-threatening, the way a guardian might position themselves to shield someone from harm. He didn't shout, didn't call attention, just made his way toward her in a way that felt natural, as if he had always been meant to be there. John Cena followed, more methodical, calculating the space around them, noting exits, the positions of other people, anything that might affect the girl's safety. He didn't speak immediately, just observed, making sure their approach didn't create panic or draw unwanted attention. Both men were silent, but their eyes communicated a shared understanding. They were there to help, and they would not let anything happen to her. The girl, noticing their careful but steady movement, felt a flicker of hope. She tried to compose herself, taking a deep breath, feeling the tension in her body ease slightly. It was strange, almost surreal, to feel this kind of reassurance from people she had only ever seen on screens. She had watched their movies, their interviews, their wrestling matches, and yet none of that prepared her for the calm, deliberate concern they showed in real life. As they closed the distance, Johnson spoke softly, just enough for her to hear. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice was gentle, steady, without any hint of judgment. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, just simple words that carried the weight of genuine concern. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should speak, unsure if they would really understand. But something about his tone, combined with Cena's silent but steady presence beside him, gave her the courage to nod. She couldn't speak yet. Her throat felt tight, but the nod was enough to convey her need for help. Cena crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to her level, his eyes softening in a way that made her feel seen and heard. He didn't rush her, didn't ask too many questions, just waited patiently, letting her know that she could take her time. This patience, this unspoken understanding, made the girl feel safer than she had in hours, maybe even days. Around them, the park continued its lively activity. Children ran past, parents chatted, music played faintly from a nearby speaker. But in that small circle around the girl, time seemed to slow down. The background noise faded, and the only things that mattered were the two men who had noticed her SOS and the girl who had finally been seen. It was a rare, almost cinematic moment, where real-life heroism didn't come from flashing lights or dramatic gestures, but from quiet, attentive care. The girl's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her posture. She had been trying to handle things on her own to stay calm and composed, but now she realized she didn't have to. She wasn't alone. Not really. Not anymore. She felt a strange mixture of gratitude and awe. These were two of the most famous people in the world, yet they had stopped in the middle of a crowded park to notice her, to make sure she was safe. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about human connection, empathy, and the instinct to protect someone in need. Johnson and Cena exchanged a brief, silent glance, a mutual understanding passing between them. They didn't need words. Their experience had taught them how to communicate quickly and efficiently when a situation required it. Both were ready to act if necessary, but for now the priority was to ensure the girl felt safe and understood. They were attentive, watching for any signs of further distress or danger, prepared to step in instantly if needed. The girl's friends began to notice the subtle shift in the air around them. They saw the two towering figures moving toward their friend and felt a moment of confusion. But Johnson and Cena made no dramatic gestures, caused no alarm, simply created a path that allowed the girl to feel supported. The friends could sense that something serious had been recognized, but they couldn't yet see what it was. The girl, however, knew exactly what was happening. She felt seen. She felt protected. As the distance closed between them, Johnson gently asked again, this time with a softer emphasis, "Are you sure you're okay? Do you need help?" His voice carried warmth, a subtle insistence that she could trust him without fear. Cena remained close, scanning the environment, a quiet sentinel ensuring that their surroundings were safe, that nothing could disrupt the moment of calm that had been established. Finally, the girl found her voice. It was small, hesitant, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of everything she had been feeling. I think I need help," she admitted, the words trembling but honest. She had been holding back, trying to appear strong, trying to convince herself that she could manage alone. But the recognition of danger, combined with the presence of these two remarkable yet human figures, allowed her to speak the truth. Johnson nodded, his expression gentle but serious. "We've got you," he said simply. Cena added, "You're not alone. We're here with you." In that moment, the girl understood something she hadn't fully grasped before. Sometimes help doesn't have to be loud, dramatic, or overwhelming. Sometimes help is quiet, steady, and unwavering. Sometimes help is two people noticing a small signal and responding with immediate care. The girl felt a wave of relief wash over her. The tension in her shoulders began to ease. The tightness in her chest loosened, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to feel safe. The park with all its noise and chaos faded into the background. The laughter of children, the chatter of families, the distant hum of music, all of it became secondary to the calm and attention being offered to her. Johnson and Cena stayed close, not pushing, not hovering, simply being present. They understood the balance between intervention and respect, between taking control and allowing the girl to regain her own sense of security. Their presence was enough. It sent a clear message to the girl that she mattered, that her safety mattered, and that she didn't have to face fear alone. And so, in the midst of a busy park filled with people, in a moment that could have gone unnoticed by everyone else, a young girl's quiet SOS had been seen and responded to with care. The girl's heart was still racing, but now it was a different kind of racing. It wasn't the fear from before. It was a mixture of relief, nervousness, and awe. She had never expected that anyone, let alone two of the most famous figures in the world, would notice her subtle call for help. She looked up at Dwayne Johnson first. His expression was serious but gentle, the kind of look that made someone feel that they were truly seen and understood. He was scanning the area again, making sure there was nothing or no one around that could make the situation worse. John Cena, standing slightly behind Johnson, exuded a calm that was almost magnetic. He didn't rush forward or make any sudden movements. Instead, he positioned himself carefully, quietly analyzing the crowd while keeping his focus on the girl. There was something reassuring about his presence, something that made her feel safe even in the middle of the bustling park. She realized that while Johnson's presence was powerful and protective, Cena's calm focus gave her a different kind of comfort, one that made her feel like every angle of the situation was being covered. The girls' friends had finally noticed her standing with the two celebrities. They were confused, unsure if they should approach or stay back. One of them whispered, "Is she okay?" And another replied, "I think so. Maybe they're just helping her." The girl, sensing their hesitation, gave a small nod to let them know she was all right for the moment. She didn't want them to panic or make things worse. She wanted to handle the situation carefully, and seeing Johnson and Cena there gave her the courage to stay calm. Johnson crouched slightly, lowering his height so that he could be at her level. "Can you tell me what's going on?" he asked softly. His voice was steady, not hurried or intrusive, but full of genuine concern. The girl hesitated at first. Speaking about what had made her uneasy wasn't easy, especially in a crowded park, with people nearby who didn't understand, but she could feel the sincerity in his eyes and the patience in Cena's stance behind him. It was clear they weren't going to rush her, embarrass her, or dismiss her feelings. They were simply waiting for her to share what she felt comfortable saying. Finally, she whispered, her voice quivering slightly. I felt unsafe. Some people were watching me. I don't know why, but I felt like I needed help." She looked down, afraid of being judged or making a fuss, but Johnson gave her a reassuring nod, a silent way of saying that she had done the right thing by speaking up. Cena's gaze softened, and he took a small step closer, making sure that if anyone tried to approach her in a threatening way, he would notice immediately. The two men exchanged a brief look, a glance that conveyed mutual understanding. They had both seen a lot of situations in their lives where quick decisions were needed, and this was no different. They didn't panic. They didn't make any exaggerated gestures. Instead, they subtly ensured that the girl was in the safest possible position without drawing attention to her or making her feel exposed. The way they moved was careful, deliberate, and protective, almost like a shield forming around her without anyone else realizing it. The girl felt a wave of gratitude, mixed with disbelief. She had grown up watching these men on television, admiring them for their strength, their performances, and their larger-than-life personalities. But this moment showed a completely different side. They weren't performing. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were simply being human, being present, and being attentive to someone who needed help. It was more impactful than any movie or wrestling match she had ever seen. Her friends, still watching from a short distance away, began to relax as well. Seeing that the girl was being handled with care and that nothing seemed dangerous calmed their nerves. They weren't exactly sure what had happened, but they could sense that the situation was being managed by people who knew what they were doing. One of them whispered to another, "I think they're safe now. Those guys know how to handle it." Johnson knelt down completely, bringing himself directly to her level. "You don't have to be scared," he said softly. "You did the right thing by signaling for help. Sometimes even small gestures can make a big difference." The girl nodded slowly, trying to absorb the words. They felt comforting and validating. It was one thing to feel unsafe and uncertain. It was another to have someone of their stature acknowledge that her feelings were real and important. Cena remained slightly behind, still observing the surroundings. His eyes were sharp, scanning the crowd subtly, noting people who might get too close or create any discomfort. He wasn't hovering in a way that felt controlling. He was simply attentive. The girl realized that his calm vigilance complemented Johnson's protective energy. One was proactive and commanding, the other quiet and observant, and together they made her feel completely supported. A few moments passed in quiet understanding. The girl's breathing slowed and she felt herself begin to relax. Johnson offered a small smile, gentle and encouraging. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed sometimes," he said. "You don't have to face it alone." Cena nodded in agreement. "We're right here with you. Just take your time." It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't over the top, but it was enough. The girl felt a sense of relief she hadn't felt in a long time. She wasn't alone. She wasn't invisible. She had been seen, heard, and understood. The subtlety of their actions was what struck her the most. They didn't shout or call attention to her. They didn't make her situation public. They handled it quietly with precision and care. It was as if they understood that the best way to help was to be present, to provide support without making her feel exposed. She thought about how different it felt from other moments in her life when she had felt unsafe. Usually she would have had to fend for herself or hope that someone noticed. But here, two people had noticed instantly, without her having to explain herself fully. As the girl began to regain her composure, Johnson asked, "Do you want to move somewhere a little quieter? We can make sure you're safe." She nodded, grateful for the suggestion. Cena led the way slightly ahead, scanning the crowd to clear a path while Johnson stayed close beside her, speaking gently and keeping a protective presence. Her friends followed at a safe distance, respecting the space that had been created around her. As they moved, the girl noticed how naturally they interacted with each other. They didn't need to give detailed instructions or talk loudly. Their coordination was seamless, a combination of experience, instinct, and empathy. Johnson would subtly position himself to shield her from any distractions, while Cena made sure their path was safe and clear. It was teamwork in its purest form, born not from rehearsed moves but from genuine care for another human being. The park had a quieter area near a small fountain surrounded by trees. Johnson guided her there, keeping a comforting distance, and Cena positioned himself slightly behind, ensuring that the space remained calm and secure. The girl felt her tension melt further. Being here with these two present made her feel almost weightless. The fear that had gripped her earlier was slowly replaced with a sense of trust and safety she hadn't expected to find. "Take a deep breath," Johnson said softly. "Everything's okay now. You're safe here." The girl did as he suggested, inhaling deeply and letting her shoulders drop. Cena remained quiet, his presence steady and reassuring. She realized that the calm wasn't just in their words or actions. It was something that radiated from them naturally. Their attention, patience, and care were enough to make her feel protected, even in a crowded and unfamiliar environment. She began to talk a little more, explaining the small details that had made her uneasy. Johnson listened intently, nodding occasionally, never interrupting or making her feel rushed. Cena remained vigilant, scanning the surroundings while maintaining a subtle but firm presence. They didn't offer judgment or advice at first, they simply listened. And in that act of listening, the girl felt more empowered than she had in hours. Her friends gradually moved closer, sensing that the moment was safe. They didn't need to say much. The girl felt the unspoken reassurance from Johnson and Cena that her friends were welcome to stay near as long as it didn't create discomfort. The situation was being managed in such a way that everyone could feel secure, and yet the girl remained at the center, the priority. As they spent these quiet moments together, the girl reflected on what had happened. She realized that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. She had signaled a small, subtle SOS, and it had been recognized instantly by two people who could have easily ignored it or been distracted. Instead, they had responded with empathy, focus, and human kindness. It was more than just noticing, it was acting, protecting, and creating a safe space without fanfare or attention. By the time she began to feel completely calm again, she knew that the encounter would stay with her for a long time, not just because she had been helped, but because she had witnessed something rare and human. Johnson and Cena had shown her that even in the busiest, most overwhelming places, genuine care and protection existed. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about being present, being attentive, and choosing to respond when someone needed help. The girl felt a quiet smile spread across her face. She looked up at Johnson, who gave her a small nod, acknowledging her recovery, and then at Cena, whose steady gaze seemed to say, "You're okay now. You're Safi." The girl sat down on the edge of the fountain, still feeling the rush of emotions from the moments that had passed. She was no longer terrified, but a quiet tension lingered in her chest, a reminder of what had just happened. She looked around at the peaceful area, surrounded by the gentle trickle of water and the shade of the trees. The park's noise had softened here, leaving a calm bubble where she could finally think. Johnson and Cena remained nearby, not hovering but staying close enough to ensure she felt safe. For a while, no one spoke. Johnson gave her a reassuring smile, while Cena continued to watch the area, scanning subtly for anything that might disrupt the calm. The girl was surprised at how natural it all felt. She had expected celebrity encounters to be overwhelming, loud, or intimidating, but here they were quietly human, patient, and understanding. The moment wasn't about fame or performance. It was about presence and connection. After a few minutes, Johnson spoke softly, leaning slightly toward her. "You're very brave," he said. "It's not easy to signal for help, especially in a crowd. But you did it, and you're okay now." The girl's eyes widened. She had never thought of her small, almost instinctive gesture as bravery. Most times she felt small and unsure in situations like this. But hearing him say it out loud with sincerity made her feel seen in a completely new way. Cena, still standing slightly behind Johnson, added, "It takes courage to admit when you feel unsafe. Many people keep it inside. You spoke up, and that's what mattered." His voice was calm, firm, yet kind. She could feel the weight of his words. They weren't just comforting. They were validating. She realized she had spent so long trying to convince herself that feeling scared or needing help was a weakness. Now she could feel that it wasn't. The girl swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. I just didn't know what to do," she admitted quietly. "I didn't want anyone to notice, but I also couldn't stay there feeling so scared." Johnson nodded gently, his eyes soft. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Cena crouched slightly, bringing his eyes level with hers. "And it also shows that you can trust people who are willing to help," he added. His words made her think. Trust had always been difficult for her, especially in situations where she felt exposed or vulnerable. But in this moment, she realized that trust could be extended to those who showed care, attention, and genuine concern. The girl took a deep breath and looked at them both. She felt a mix of admiration and gratitude, a sense that these men weren't just heroes on a screen. They were capable of real kindness and empathy. Johnson leaned back slightly, smiling in a way that made him approachable, while Cena remained vigilant, quietly protective. The balance of their energy was remarkable. One was warm and reassuring, the other calm and steady, creating a safe environment where she could begin to relax fully. After a moment, Johnson asked, "Do you want to tell us more about what happened?" "Only if you feel comfortable, of course." The girl hesitated. Speaking about the details of her fear was difficult. She worried she might sound dramatic or silly, but looking at them, she saw nothing but patience and care. She realized that this was a safe space, a moment where her feelings could exist without judgment. I just felt like someone was watching me," she began slowly. "I didn't know if they meant harm or if I was imagining it. But the feeling, it wouldn't go away. I tried to stay calm, tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. I didn't know what else to do." Johnson nodded, listening intently, his expression serious but kind. Cena's eyes never left the surroundings, yet his attention was also on her, showing that he was fully present. "You handled it well," Johnson said gently. "Sometimes our instincts tell us when something isn't right. You trusted yours, and that's very important. Many people ignore those feelings and get hurt. You did the right thing." The girl felt warmth rise in her chest. It was reassuring to hear someone she respected affirm her feelings and choices. She realized that her instincts were valid and that her reactions mattered. Cena added, "It's natural to feel shaken after something like this. But it's also important to remember that you have people around who can support you. You're not alone." His calm, steady presence made her feel a little braver. She wasn't just telling a story to strangers. She was sharing it with people who genuinely cared. The idea that someone could respond to her fear with such focus and compassion was overwhelming, but also empowering. The girl paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. I was afraid my friends wouldn't notice. I didn't want to embarrass them or ruin the day. But I also couldn't handle it alone." Johnson's eyes softened, and he said, "Your friends care about you, but sometimes people don't see the signals. That's why it's important to speak up. You found a way to get help without making anyone feel uncomfortable." "That was very smart," Cena smiled slightly. "It's a skill, actually. Not everyone knows how to ask for help without creating a scene. You did it perfectly. The girl felt a sense of pride mixed with relief. She had only acted on instinct, but hearing them describe it as smart and brave made her feel seen in a completely new way. She realized that even small actions could have a big impact, and that she had handled herself with strength she hadn't recognized before. For a while, the three of them sat quietly, enjoying the calm of the park. The fountain bubbled gently, and the shade of the trees created a peaceful atmosphere. Her friends had slowly gathered nearby, sensing that the moment was safe and that they could be present without disrupting the calm. The girl felt grateful for their patience as well. They hadn't rushed her or pushed her to talk. Johnson leaned back slightly and said, "Sometimes the best thing we can do for someone is just be there, to listen, to make them feel safe. You did that for yourself by asking for help, and now we can make sure you're fully safe." Cena nodded, adding, "And you can carry this moment with you. Remember that it's okay to trust, to ask for help, and to accept support when you need it. You don't have to handle everything alone." The girl felt a sense of calm settle over her. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The fear that had gripped her earlier was still there in the background, a reminder of why she had acted, but it no longer controlled her. She realized that support, attention, and care could turn fear into reassurance. She wasn't just being helped in the moment. She was learning how to trust herself and others, and that lesson felt profound. Johnson smiled and said, "Do you want to stay here for a little while? We can make sure you're comfortable before heading back to your friends." The girl nodded, feeling safe and supported. Cena continued to watch the surroundings, his eyes sharp but calm, creating an invisible barrier that allowed her to breathe and relax. The combination of their energies, warmth, protection, calm vigilance, felt like a shield she could rest within. Her friends slowly moved closer, giving her space but also showing that they were there for her. The girl looked at them and smiled faintly. "I'm okay now," she said softly. "I just needed a moment." Johnson nodded approvingly, and Cena gave a slight reassuring smile. It was a small moment, but it carried the weight of reassurance, validation, and care. The girl began to talk more, sharing small details about what had made her uneasy. She explained how she had noticed certain people watching her, how she had tried to ignore it, and how it had escalated her fear. Johnson listened intently, nodding occasionally, never interrupting or dismissing her feelings. Cena remained watchful, ensuring that the environment stayed calm while also offering quiet encouragement. "You did everything right," Johnson said after she finished. "You trusted your instincts, asked for help, and stayed calm. That's more than most people would do." The girl felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of pride and relief. Cena added, "And now you know that help can come from unexpected places. You're stronger than you realized." As they spent the next few minutes together, the girl began to feel a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that fear didn't have to dominate her. She could act, she could ask for help, and she could trust that there were people who would respond with care. Johnson and Cena had shown her that, not through words alone, but through their presence, patience, and empathy. Finally, Johnson said, "When you're ready, we can go back to your friends. They care about you, and now you're fully safe." Cena nodded, and the girl stood, feeling steady and confident. She looked at the two men, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. They both smiled warmly, the kind of smile that made her feel truly acknowledged. As they began walking back toward her friends, the girl realized that this day would stay with her forever, not just for the fear she had felt, but for the way it had been handled, for the care she had received, and for the human kindness she had witnessed. Johnson and Cena hadn't just protected her, they had shown her what it meant to be truly attentive, understanding, and empathetic. And that lesson, she knew, was far more valuable than any other she had learned before. The girl had begun to feel calmer after sharing her feelings with Johnson and Cena, but the sense of unease from earlier was still quietly present, a reminder that the situation wasn't over until she was truly safe. Johnson looked around the park, his expression serious but composed. "We need to make sure you're completely okay before anything else," he said softly. Cena nodded, already scanning the paths and people nearby, making mental notes of exits, distances, and anyone who might come too close. The girl felt a mix of relief and nervousness. She had grown comfortable in the quiet space by the fountain, but the thought of moving through the crowd again made her stomach tighten. Johnson noticed her hesitation immediately. "We'll go slowly," he said. You don't need to rush. We're right here. Cena gave a small nod in agreement. It wasn't just words. The way they positioned themselves around her gave her a sense of invisible protection. Her friends were nearby, standing quietly, unsure how to react. They had been waiting patiently, sensing that the girl needed a moment of calm. She gave them a small smile and a nod to reassure them. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I just need a little help." They nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. Johnson offered his arm gently. "You can take my arm if you want. We'll move together." Cena moved slightly ahead, his eyes scanning for any obstacles or disturbances. The girl hesitated for a second, but then took Johnson's arm. It felt comforting, grounding, and gave her a small sense of control in a moment that had felt chaotic. As they walked toward the main area of the park, the girl noticed how careful they were. Johnson kept a protective presence beside her, while Cena subtly guided the path ahead, ensuring there were no sudden movements from people who might startle her. Their coordination was smooth and natural. It wasn't theatrical, it was practical, human, and focused on her well-being. The crowd seemed oblivious to the careful maneuvering happening around the girl. People passed by, chatting and laughing, unaware that the quiet gestures of two men were creating a shield around someone in need. The girl felt a sense of gratitude she couldn't fully put into words. These two men, famous for their public lives and achievements, were quietly acting in a way that made her feel valued, protected, and heard. As they moved, Johnson spoke softly. "It's okay to feel nervous. Even after everything is calm, it's natural to still feel tension. Take your time," Cena added. "And remember, you've done everything right so far. You signaled for help, you stayed composed, and now you're moving safely. That's a lot of strength." The girl felt the words sink in. Strength didn't always mean being fearless. Sometimes it meant asking for help, trusting others, and allowing herself to be guided. They reached a slightly more open area, where fewer people were gathered. Johnson slowed, giving the girl space to breathe. "Let's make sure your friends are right behind us," he said. She turned slightly to see them, relieved that they were following carefully. Cena pointed toward a path that led to a quieter section of the park, away from the denser crowds. "We'll move this way. It's calmer and safer," he explained. The girl felt a small smile. Even the smallest gestures, like choosing a quieter path, made a huge difference. It wasn't just about physical safety, it was about emotional reassurance. The careful attention to her comfort allowed her to regain confidence step by step. As they continued, the girl began to notice the way Johnson and Cena interacted with each other. There was no rush, no overbearing instructions, just a silent understanding of roles. Johnson's presence was protective, steady, and close, while Cena's focus was outward, scanning and planning, making sure nothing could disrupt their path. Together they created an environment where the girl felt fully supported. The girl's friends finally caught up and joined them in the quieter area. Johnson nodded at them. "Thanks for giving her space," he said kindly. "She needed it." The friends looked slightly embarrassed but relieved. One whispered, "We didn't know what was happening, but we're glad she's okay." Johnson smiled gently. "She's okay now. That's what matters." Once in the calmer section, Johnson and Cena guided the girl to a shaded bench near the trees. "Take a seat," Johnson said softly. "We'll make sure you're fully comfortable here." She sat down, feeling her tension slowly melt. The gentle movement from a crowded space to a quieter one, guided carefully by people she trusted, made her feel more secure than she had in hours. Cena remained standing nearby, vigilant but calm. Johnson crouched slightly beside her, ensuring she could see his face. "You've done very well," he said. "You've stayed calm, trusted your instincts, and allowed yourself to accept help. That's a lot of courage." The girl felt tears welling up, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe. She had never felt so seen and supported. Her friends gathered closer, giving her smiles of reassurance. One of them said, "We're glad you're safe. Thank you for letting us know." The girl nodded. "I was scared, but I'm okay now," she said softly. Johnson added, "And you're stronger than you realize. Strength isn't about facing danger alone. It's about knowing when to accept help and staying composed under pressure." The girl felt the meaning of those words. Until this moment, she had often thought strength meant handling everything on her own. But now she saw that courage could also mean trusting others, allowing yourself to be supported and moving forward despite fear. Johnson and Cena hadn't just protected her physically, they had shown her how to navigate fear with composure and courage. After a few minutes of quiet reflection, Johnson asked, "Do you feel ready to return to the main area of the park?" The girl hesitated. She wanted to, but part of her was still cautious. Cena's calm presence reminded her that she didn't need to rush. "Take your time," he said. "There's no hurry. We'll go when you're ready." The girl took a deep breath, looking around the serene area. The sun filtered gently through the trees. The fountain's water sparkled, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves. She felt grounded, her heart slowing. "I think I'm ready," she said finally, her voice steady. Johnson gave a warm smile. "Good. We'll walk slowly together." Cena adjusted his position slightly, ensuring the path ahead was clear and safe. As they began walking back, the girl noticed how people in the park moved around them. No one seemed to notice the careful coordination happening. Johnson stayed close, offering support and reassurance, while Cena led subtly, keeping their path safe. Her friends followed carefully, aware that the girl's comfort and safety were the priority. Along the way, Johnson spoke gently. "You've handled everything with maturity. You stayed calm even when you were scared, and you reached out when you needed help. That's something to be proud of." The girl felt warmth in her chest. She had acted instinctively, but hearing it acknowledged as maturity and courage made her feel validated. Cena added, "And remember, this doesn't end here. You've learned something important today. About trusting your instincts, asking for help, and knowing that people will respond with care. Carry that with you." The girl nodded. The lesson was clear and unforgettable. It wasn't just about one moment in a park. It was about recognizing support and learning to accept it without fear. They reached the edge of the park where her friends had first been standing. Johnson turned to her with a smile. "You're fully safe now. Everything's under control." Cena nodded, his calm presence steady. The girl's friends rushed forward, relieved and grateful, offering hugs and words of encouragement. She felt supported, seen, and cared for in a way that went beyond words. Johnson spoke gently to the girl one last time before leaving. "Remember today. Remember how you handled yourself. You were brave and you were smart. And don't forget it's okay to trust people who want to help." Cena added, "You've done everything right. Carry this strength with you and know you're never alone." The girl looked at them, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'll never forget this." Both men gave her warm smiles, acknowledging her words. Then slowly they stepped back, allowing her to rejoin her friends fully, leaving the girl with a lasting sense of safety, empowerment, and understanding. Even as the crowd around them continued its usual rhythm, children laughing, families chatting, friends taking pictures, the girl felt a quiet strength within herself. The fear that had gripped her earlier had been replaced with confidence and reassurance. She had been seen, heard, and protected, and more importantly, she had learned that real courage included asking for help, trusting others, and moving forward with composure. As the day continued, she walked among her friends with a sense of calm she had never expected to find. The park no longer felt overwhelming. The people around her no longer seemed intimidating. She had been guided, protected, and supported in a way that had changed her perspective. Today had begun with fear, but it ended with courage, care, and understanding, the kind of lessons that last a lifetime. By the time the girl had fully rejoined her friends, the sun had begun to tilt lower in the sky, casting warm golden light across the park. The busy energy of the day had softened, and the noise of laughter, music, and chatter had become a gentle backdrop rather than an overwhelming hum. She felt different now, lighter in a way she hadn't expected, carrying the calm and reassurance that Johnson and Cena had given her. It wasn't just relief, it was a sense of confidence, of knowing that even in moments of fear, she could act and be supported. Her friends gathered around her, offering smiles, words of comfort, and quiet questions. "Are you really okay?" one of them asked. She nodded, a soft smile forming on her lips. "I'm okay now," she said. "I was scared, but I'm okay." She realized she didn't need to explain everything. The most important part had already happened. She had been seen, acknowledged, and protected. The experience had changed her perspective in a way that words alone could not capture. The girl took a deep breath, letting the gentle breeze brush against her face. Her mind replayed the events of the afternoon, the way she had felt a small spark of fear, how she had hesitated, and then how she had taken the small, almost instinctive step to signal for help. That small gesture had been noticed immediately, and it had set off a chain of actions that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't thought possible. It wasn't just about being rescued in a moment of uncertainty. It was about the humanity, care, and attention that had followed. Johnson and Cena had not made a scene. They had not called attention to her. They had acted quietly, patiently, and thoughtfully, making sure she felt secure while still preserving her dignity. That was what struck her the most. In a world where celebrity encounters often felt staged, loud, or performative, this had been real, sincere, and deeply human. Their actions had not only resolved her fear, they had shown her a way to trust, to allow others to help, and to accept support without shame or hesitation. Her friends were still nearby, processing what had happened as well. They had seen the subtle way the two men had created space around her, guided her to safety, and listened without judgment. Even from a distance, it was clear how thoughtful and careful their actions had been. One of her friends whispered, "They really knew what they were doing." The girl nodded, realizing that it wasn't just fame or experience that had guided them. It was empathy, attentiveness, and genuine care for another human being. She thought about how differently the day could have gone. She could have stayed frozen in fear, feeling trapped and isolated. She could have hesitated too long to ask for help, or tried to handle the situation alone. Instead, she had acted, and she had been met with immediate recognition and thoughtful intervention. That realization filled her with a quiet sense of empowerment. She had agency in moments of fear, and she had learned that asking for help was not a weakness. It was a form of strength. As the park continued to calm into the late afternoon, the girl reflected on the subtle lessons that had emerged. Courage was not just about boldness or action without fear. It was about recognizing when you needed help and trusting that others could respond with care. Strength wasn't only about handling challenges alone. It was about the willingness to accept support and guidance. Even small gestures like signaling for help could create a profound impact when met with understanding. She thought about Johnson and Cena, their different approaches and complementary energies. Johnson had been protective, warm, and attentive, providing an immediate sense of safety and reassurance. Cena had been calm, strategic, and observant, watching the surroundings and ensuring that the environment remained secure. Together, they had created a balance that allowed her to feel completely safe while still respecting her autonomy. It wasn't just about being famous or powerful. It was about human instinct, empathy, and respect. The girl's friends noticed the change in her demeanor. She had gone from anxious and uncertain to calm, grounded, and reflective. They could see that the experience had not only provided immediate safety, but had also left a lasting impression. One friend gently said, "You seem different, stronger somehow." The girl smiled. "I think I am," she replied softly. "I've realized that it's okay to ask for help, and that people can respond with care when you do." The moment felt quiet but significant, a turning point in her understanding of courage and human connection. She realized that the afternoon had been more than an incident. It had been a lesson in trust, empathy, and resilience. The actions of Johnson and Cena had shown her that true heroism wasn't just about strength or fame. It was about noticing the needs of others and responding with patience, care, and attention. As the sun dipped lower, the girl felt a gentle warmth of gratitude fill her chest. She thought about how she would remember this day, not for the fear she had felt, but for the way it had been met with understanding and support. The two men had stayed calm, present, and considerate, guiding her through fear without diminishing her sense of agency. That had made all the difference. She began to imagine how she could carry this lesson forward. Perhaps she could be more attentive to the needs of others, noticing small signals of discomfort or distress and responding with empathy. Perhaps she could remind herself that asking for help was a form of strength. She realized that courage wasn't just an abstract idea. It could be lived, practiced, and shared through simple acts of care. Her friends slowly gathered closer, ready to leave the park. The girl took one last deep breath, savoring the calm, the sunlight, and the soft sounds of the park. She felt a renewed sense of confidence and awareness. Today had started with fear, but it had ended with understanding, connection, and personal growth. She had been seen, acknowledged, and supported, and she had learned something that would stay with her for life. As they walked together toward the exit, The girl reflected on the subtle ways that Johnson and Cena had influenced her understanding of courage and empathy. Their presence had not been about fame or recognition. It had been about quiet, deliberate action and genuine human connection. She realized that heroism could be ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Ordinary, because it could be as simple as noticing a small signal for help. Extraordinary because it could have a profound, lasting impact on someone's life. She glanced back toward where the two men had guided her earlier and noticed them quietly interacting with the park staff and other visitors. They had not made themselves the center of attention, nor had they lingered for recognition. Instead, they had returned to the world around them with the same attentiveness, demonstrating that acts of care and empathy could be quiet, thoughtful, and far-reaching. The girl felt a sense of hope settle over her. She realized that even in moments of fear and uncertainty, there were people capable of responding with kindness and understanding. That realization filled her with a sense of possibility. She felt stronger, more capable, and more connected to the world around her. She had witnessed human care in its simplest and most profound form, and it had left an indelible impression on her heart. Her friends began to chatter as they neared the park's exit, talking about the day's events and making plans for the rest of the afternoon. The girl listened, smiling quietly, feeling grounded and calm. She knew that the lessons of the day would stay with her, shaping the way she approached fear, trust, and connection. She had learned that courage was not just about action. It was about awareness, empathy, and the willingness to accept care when it was offered. As they stepped out of the park and into the fading sunlight, the girl felt a quiet sense of gratitude for the unexpected turn her day had taken. What had begun as a moment of fear had become a profound lesson in human connection, resilience, and courage. She had been seen, listened to, and guided with care, and she had learned that strength was not always solitary. It could be shared, accepted, and nurtured through the actions of others. She looked at her friends, smiling, and felt a renewed sense of confidence. Today had been a reminder that even in moments of uncertainty, support could be found. Even in a crowded, overwhelming world, there were people capable of noticing, caring, and acting with empathy. And even more importantly, she had learned that her instincts, her courage, and her willingness to seek help were valuable and worthy of recognition. As they walked down the final path, leaving the park behind, the girl felt a quiet sense of closure. The fear that had shadowed her earlier had been replaced with calm, reassurance, and a deep understanding of what it meant to be human. She had been protected, guided, and validated in a way that would remain with her forever. And she knew that the lessons of this day, about courage, empathy, trust, and human connection, would continue to guide her long after the park and the afternoon had faded from memory. For the girl, the experience had become more than a story of fear and relief. It had become a story of growth, understanding, and empowerment. She had learned that human kindness could be quiet but profound, that courage could take the form of asking for help, and that even small gestures could have life-changing impact. The park, once a place of anxiety, had become a place of transformation, and she carried that lesson with her as she stepped into the rest of her day with newfound confidence.